Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Tales from the Wandering Quill Book Impressions and Review. Today I'll be telling you about the next book that I have finished reading, Mary Quigley's Da by Mary Jaffe, Nee Scott. Now this book is a mix of historical fiction and a little bit of a biography because the story follows Mary Jaffe's own family. As she states, it is a tragedy of an Irish immigrant couple and their children caught on the Kansas-Missouri border during the Civil War. And, according to Pacific Review, based on true events, thought-provoking and engaging, a masterful historical fiction narrative like no other. Here is the official synopsis of Mary Quigley's Da. In 1849, half-brothers Michael and Joseph Quigley arrived in America seeking relief from the Irish potato famine. Their dying father tasked Michael to watch over Joe. But young Joe is headstrong and soon runs away. He spent his teen years in the wild cow towns of West Bottoms, where his entrepreneurial savvy propels him into a successful business until a worldwide depression sends him scrambling. Joe meets and marries another Irish Catholic, Mary McManus, who comes from a family of the higher ilk. The unlikely couple settles in a frontier riddled with lawless violence, which leaves them burned out by jayhawkers. Natural catastrophes, failed crops, Joe's military service, and illnesses outburden them, but it is a shocking single event that leads to the destruction of Joe's family. Through the eyes of 9-year-old little Mary Quigley, Joe and Mary's second-born daughter, we observe the ultimate horrific moment that leaves her and her 5 siblings orphaned. This particular act becomes their dark family secret and leaves a lamentable legacy that has waited for generations to be revealed. And in the way this story is presented, how I interpreted it, it starts with the present, which is 1875. And then it works backwards to the 1860s and the 1840s. And then it starts from the 40s, and then it goes back to the present, which from 1840s, then to the 50s and the 60s, and ending back in the early 1870s. I found that very unique, and it did take me a while to understand that that is what the author was trying to convey. And it's a very interesting story. It reads like historical fiction, but it also has a lot of a biographic tone in terms of like information. But if you can get behind that and follow along this very unique style of narrative, I think this is a book for you. And like always, as I started with the Seasons of Abaddon, I'll be reading the prologue and the first chapter and providing my initial review for you all. Now, let us begin Mary Quigley's Da by Mary Jaffe, Nee Scott. Little Mary Quigley could not know, but the moment of her parents' death would long outlive her. Mary could not know how her parents' names would be atoned or shrouded in mystery and shamed for decades. To some degree, those moments damaged or changed everyone she loved. Those moments would be relived all the days of her life and will become her family's legacy after her passing. Those moments will become her darkest secret, her greatest burden, and the focus of endless conversations and searches for truth by her children and grandchildren, whose existence she had not yet contemplated. None would have ever heard or think of Mary Quigley without pondering Mary Quigley's Da. And we'll begin Chapter 1. Farm of Mary and Joseph Quigley, Pleasant Hill, Cass County, Missouri, September 13th, 1877. Alone and silent, her back pressed against the dark-stained south side of the family's small farmhouse, little Mary peered carefully around its southwest corner. She saw Uncle Mike Quigley, brother of her dad, Joseph Quigley, sitting under the dying walnut tree in her dad's broken three-legged chair. The hired hand, Melvin Knight, sat on the back steps around the northwest corner of their house. Less than an hour before, in a tragedy of her dad's making, Mary and her 5 siblings had fled for help and safety. Mike and Melvin believed all 6 Quigley children were now in refuge at the Collins farm or at Michael's. They were unaware of the curious 9-year-old Mary's presence at the back of the house, where she silently watched Uncle Mike shivering in distress. Mary also trembled from the horror of what her da had done in their home. Mary glanced south and noticed that her Ma's Jersey milk cows was headed from the far end of the pasture to the shed. It was unusual for Polly to come up so early. Mary returned her gaze toward Mike to determine whether he thought Polly was revealing little Mary's presence, or if she was merely curious about the crumbled Mary McManus lying on the shaded ground. On the sunny side of the house, Michael was sorting out this event the best way he could and began his unbearable vigil for the sheriff to arrive with questions. It was approaching time to milk, but he would wait until after the sheriff had come and gone. With his bloody wooden hand, Melvin could not help, and the children were gone and could not be helped. Mary thought that maybe Mr. Hill would send his boys over to the Quigley's chores after they had finished their own. Hoping Mike and Melvin would stay out of the house, Mary prayed, "God, please be with me. Make them stay where they are." Mary watched in the fading sun as Mike quietly questioned and comforted Melvin, who was audibly sobbing. Mary wondered if Mike had looked into the lifeless hazel eyes of his sister-in-law, Mary McManus, lying in the brown September shadow of the late afternoon on the other side of the house. Except for Mass, which Joe had quit attending, neither McManus nor the children had seen nor spoken with Uncle Mike since Joseph's drunken attempt to retrieve a sow the year before. Joe had threatened to shoot and kill Mike in the midst of a 2-year struggle over hogs. Mary wondered if Mike had leaned over Ma's pale, lifeless body to tell how sorry he was that his brother had finally done this to her. Mary had already spoken to her. She had told her dead Ma that she was sorry and that she and Ellen could not do nothing to stop Da. She asked God to wake her mother up. "I need you, Ma, please, God." But she knew it wouldn't happen. Not many months ago, little Mary's drunken father had driven her Ma and siblings from their home in the cold. As usual, Melvin had intervened because Mike had given up interfering out of fear and disgust. Surrender from the problem had brought Mike's family some peace. Mary knew it also brought guilt for letting Mary McManus Quigley and her children down. Mike's absence from their lives had been painful. Mary saw it in his face the day she stood on his porch as he told her he could no longer come to her home to save her family. For several years, Mary McManus Quigley and her children had been forced to handle Joseph on their own, or with the minimal interventions of the Hills, Collinses, or other neighbors who attended from the road where the children's screaming reached a devilish pitch. Only an hour earlier in the September afternoon, Mike's dreadful vision had been delivered in shocking reality. It arrived with Ellen galloping bareback up the lane with little Thomas, without benefit of halter or saddle, and holding fast to the dark mane of Joseph's sorrel mare, for Mike to see Ellen galloping up to his house, with a small brother hanging on to her was terribly out of the ordinary. How these children can ride, he thought, but why is she here, like this? Mike called toward the barn for his oldest son, John. "I'm afraid it's Uncle Joe," John said, and he was right. This was going to be the event they feared the most, the inevitable and irreversible tragedy caused by an enraged, drunken Joe Quigley with a revolver in his hand. He had threatened over and over. This time, he had done it. The tortured looks of the children's faces did little to prepare Michael and John for Ellen's precise and appalling revelations.